Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Checking in for a few words to share with you this morning, or this afternoon, I guess it is, on this beautiful day. Hope that you're having a great day, and I'm glad that you decided to give a few minutes to God's Word and just see what He'd have to share with us today. So, got to thinking today about the idea of generations as I was reading through Proverbs chapter 20, and as I was going through some news headlines, it just struck me that this passage, this verse from Proverbs was in my mind today. It says Proverbs 20, verse 7. It says, the righteous man leads a blameless life. Blessed are his children after him. Blessed are his children after him. And that was the phrase that really stuck with me. And there's other verses, there's other passages in the Bible that talk about this idea of generations. But that's the verse I want to highlight today or talk on, is really this idea that the righteous man leads a life and the children that come after him are blessed, right? That there's this idea of a generational sharing that goes on, that if I do my part, generations after me will be blessed on how I've lived and what I've done. And it got me thinking about a couple of things. One got me thinking of was I saw today that in Switzerland, grandparents are being encouraged to hug their grandkids. And so they've been under lockdown from what I understand, but they're posting something today. Just saw the headline come across that Swiss grandparents are being welcomed or invited to hug their grandchildren. And with it being my son's birthday tomorrow, my in-laws came over yesterday. We kept social distance. We stayed in the yard. But my mother-in-law really had a hard time not hugging Ethan. And so, he stood 6 feet behind them for the picture. And it was just one of those things where it's tough, right? Because the generational, the mentality is like, it's a grandma, it's a grandpa. You want to give a hug. You want to embrace. So that was a thought I had as far as generationally speaking. Last night I was talking to Emily, just right before bed, and she says the word oof all the time. And it's cute when she says it. It's something that a lot of kids her age say. And I said, Emily, I think it's awesome when you say that word. She's like, that's just what Gen Z does. That's a word that we say. And my son, Ethan, likes to say yeet. And most of us that are older have no idea what that means, but they love it, right? And so we think of these idea of generations. I saw a headline a few weeks back that there was a lady who was 109 years old who passed away from the coronavirus. And this was early on. I think this was probably late March. And they were just making the notice, or they were making the assumption or understanding, like, this lady had survived the smallpox back in the 1918, but had actually passed away in corona based on her age. But again, thinking about this idea of generations and what happens when we live our life and what we pass on to the next. I got thinking, now my age, I'm 40 years old, and so I remember my great-grandpa McConnell. He lived to be 100 years old, and so he was in World War I. Like, he fought in World War I, and I have that experience. So if you're older than me, you probably know people who were in World War I. Your grandparents or parents, would have grown up in different times. They would have known of the Great Depression. My grandfather, my grandpa Spears, served in World War II. Korea, all those things. There's these experiences, these moments in life that we look back on, and we realize that moments and events in history, they've shaped and they've determined how people live. They've changed the shift of culture and the direction of lives. And what I want to say, though, today, what I want to encourage you with is this. Every generation is going to face some things. There's going to be some situations that come up. There's going to be some struggles that arise. Ours happens to be, for me as a father right now, where I've got kids in middle school. What's happened over the last month in our country, in our life, will be one of the things that I'm going to talk about when I'm old. When I'm whatever, if I get to be old, if I'm blessed with that opportunity, I'm going to remember 2020. It's going to be something I'm going to share. It's something that I'm going to talk about with my kids ad nauseum. I'm going to go back. I'm going to relive. And you are too, if you're here and you're hearing this message, right? And so there's always moments. There's always occasions. And maybe that's 9/11 for many of us that can remember that. My kids don't know 9/11 other than historical facts. Some of you know the Vietnam War. I don't know the Vietnam War other than it was something I learned in class while I was in school. But here's what I want to share with you today and take us back to the book of Proverbs. And Proverbs says, the righteous man leads a blameless life, and blessed are his children after him. If you'd allow me to inverse that, right, we could say the wicked man lives a flawed life, and his children are cursed after him. The question is not what is going to happen to us. Things are going to happen to us, situations, circumstances. Now, not every day is going to be a pandemic. Not every year is going to be a war. Not every time are we going to lose our job. Not every situation are we going to go through a divorce or a tragedy or something in our life. But there's going to be things happen to us. The question I want to ask us is this: how do we respond in those moments? How do we act? How do we behave? What are our choices? What are our words? What are our attitudes? I've heard it said many different times in many different ways. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to that. And I think we're in this moment of life right now where we get to decide how we're going to respond, and generations after us are going to be affected by that. Right? How we're responding right now today, the choices that we're making, the attitude we're living with, the emotions that we're showing, the frustration that we're feeling, maybe the anxiety that we're carrying, maybe the recklessness that we're showing, whatever those things might be, we need to realize that the generations to come are going to be affected based on our actions and behaviors and attitudes today. So with that being said, can I just challenge you today? Can I encourage you? I don't want to challenge you. I want to encourage you today. I want to encourage you today to realize that your actions and behaviors today will make a difference 50 years from now. Because your grandkids or great-grandkids or people that will come after you will look back at our generation. They will look back at our time. They will look back at our actions, and they'll say, wow, that generation handled that with poise. Wow, my grandpa handled that with class. My grandma did such a great job surviving that uncertainty. Or wow, they really turned to Jesus in that moment. They really demonstrated love and compassion. They really reached out and helped their neighbors. They really extended grace and forgiveness. They really prayed more. They turned to God more. Whatever that might be, our attitudes and actions will be reflected in the lives of those to come. The righteous man is going to do what leads to blessing of future generations. The wicked man is going to do what leads to cursing of future generations. My encouragement to you is to choose wisely how we respond to what's going to happen to us. I think of the generations that endured great world wars. I think of the generations that survived great famines. I think of the generation in my family that eventually said Jesus is going to matter, in the legacy that has left in my life and hopefully in the lives of my kids and my grandkids. I'm praying that I can be a link in the chain to Jesus, that I can bridge that gap, that I can show an example, that I can live in love in such a way that generations to come are blessed by how I've lived, not cursed because of what I've done. Just a simple thought from a simple man. Check out the scriptures today, Proverbs 20, verse 7. The righteous man lives a blameless life, and the children are blessed after him. May we be a blessing to those that come after us. Love y'all. Peace out. Have a super awesome, amazing day. Deuces.